additional questions? Go ahead.
It's really an extraordinary panel, so thank you. I guess I would start with you again, Mr. Butler. Over time, we've seen that these data privacy frameworks move away from a notice and consent regime to a focus on data minimization, transparency, consumer control, opt-out rights. Why is notice and consent insufficient for protecting user privacy?
Thank you for the question, Senator Klobuchar. I think notice and consent really takes us back to that self-regulation point that was made in the FTC report 25 years ago, because that's essentially what it is, right? It's a rule set that says so long as you disclose in general terms what you're doing, then the law permits it. And of course, the incentives there are clear. You put in your disclosure everything you could ever potentially do with that data.
Says the senator who decided every morning this week I'm going to spend 5 minutes pushing unsubscribe on my email, and I am still getting, I've cut it in half what I'm getting. Yes, it's a nightmare.
And it doesn't shift business practices.
I know, but it's just really sad. Okay, continue on, Mr. Butler.
And it doesn't shift business practices, and it doesn't change anything about the surveillance that surrounds us and the data collection that pervades, which is why a set of data minimization rules that better align the business practices with the expectations of the users and link the collection and use of data to what the services that people are actually requesting, I think better aligns with those reasons and is a much easier way to solve the problem than, as I mentioned earlier, the individual control concept, which then requires us to all make thousands of choices every second of every day and face pop-ups and questions and detailed settings.
And then you pop the wrong one, you put it one. Suddenly you're in something else.
Exactly.
Mr. Levine, what barriers does today's notice and consent regime that I was just talking to Mr. Butler about for data privacy create for enforcers who are trying to protect consumers?
Well, that's a great question, Senator, and I alluded to it earlier. It's not only our data privacy cases, but so many of the enforcement actions we brought at the FTC over the last 4 years. We said, look, you surprised consumers, you misled consumers, you abused their data, you shared what medication they were taking with Facebook. And the company says, hold up, we put it all in our privacy policy. And the consumer clicked, I accept, before proceeding to use the service. This is a total fiction. It's a total fantasy that consumers can protect themselves by reading privacy policies. And to Mr. Thayer's excellent point, we can draw a direct line between Congress's, in my opinion, inability to pass privacy laws and big tech lobbying. This is the most valuable industry in the history of the planet, and they have built their revenue not by selling cars, not by selling oil, but by collecting our data and predicting our behaviors. That's how they've built their valuations. They don't want restrictions on what they can collect, and that's why I think it's so important Congress defy what they want and actually pass a strong bill.
Very good. Mr. Martino, in your written testimony, you say that businesses should not be responsible for the data practices. We already went over that. But I guess my second question about that is just when you look at the differences between, as we look at how we craft this federal law and the states and what stopped us before, how do you think we're going to get around that to get to a place where we can get something done?
That's a great question. Thank you, Senator. I do think that we start with where the strong consensus of state laws have been. They have outlined, as Ms. Goodlatte pointed out, a set of requirements. Our issue has really been with who gets exemptions, who's subject to the liability for violations, and is the law taking care of it? I would say one of the things you can take from the state laws is that they realize there is this imbalance in negotiating power between smaller Main Street businesses and large big tech companies. So they have taken the route of putting statutory requirements in. We're just asking that you build on that framework and add a few more. One of the key issues on the APRA and the ADPPA before it was that there was a big debate over data minimization standards. And when the bill was originally drafted, the ADPPA, it was applying to both covered entities, which are like the controllers or Main Street businesses, as well as the processors. But processors and big tech did not support that bill until that data minimization standard was changed to apply only to covered entities or controllers. And that is, a fundamental difference, I think. While there are very good requirements in state levels, and most of the states are in the same place, it is not the case that everyone in the marketplace is handling data and protecting data for consumers and honoring their rights to the same level that is being put on the consumer-facing businesses. And we think Americans expect that their privacy is the same everywhere, as I said in my testimony, and we should have requirements that make that happen. In terms of the politics, if big tech's been fighting some of the previous bills that weren't so, heavy on them, yes, it's going to be more challenging if bills are, more fairly and have equivalent standards, more fairly balanced. So, but
one of our best arguments as we look at the politics of this is on both sides is affordability. And Mr. Levine, I know you did this study on how the collection of this data can affect affordability. So I look at some of the fresh new arguments we can make to convince our colleagues, which is always fun to do, but we're doing better and better. Could you tell us about that?
Well, I think it is a new argument, Senator, because it's a new practice we're seeing more and more companies using. Some people think of privacy as a discrete issue. I have nothing to hide. You have nothing to hide. Privacy is much deeper than that. And what we are finding and what the FTC study found is that companies are using these reams of data they've collected, and they've historically used to target people with advertisements. We know that's been very profitable. But they're suddenly realizing they could target people with individual prices. And they go around and they tell members of Congress and state houses, oh, we're just doing this because we want to lower prices and send people discounts. This is ridiculous. They are paying companies like McKinsey, high-priced pricing consultants, to use AI optimization and reams of consumer data to set individual prices, and they're not doing it to lower their profits. They're not doing it to lower their prices. They're doing it so that they can raise prices on the Americans who are most desperate for goods and services. We have always seen that pricing abuses can start in the airline industry. That is what we are seeing now with Delta, and I have a lot of concern this is going to spread throughout the economy, and the early results of our FTC study show that it already is.
And we've seen the same thing, Marcia, but with rent, by the way, and
Absolutely.
collecting of data on
Let
rent.
me jump in